What's going on, everybody? This is Brian Turner here with another episode of the No Stress Midwest podcast. We are lucky enough to be joined by Justin Mapp, former U.S. national team player, MLS player, U.S. residency graduate, and all of the above. He now does some personalized training and coaching. Justin, how are things going, man?
Brian, things are good, man. All's well on my end. I appreciate you having me.
No, for sure. I thank you for being on. So a little background. Justin and I met not this past year, or I guess 2019, at the ODP Memphis Regionals. And he was the coach of a Mississippi team. I was down there representing Kansas, and we went against each other. I'm pretty sure his team smacked us. So lucky enough, he came up. We started chatting after the game a bit, and then once he introduced himself and said his name, I was like, "Oh shoot, I know exactly who you are. I've seen you play and represent the national team. I've seen you in the MLS, so it was really cool to meet him there." And then he came in town for his B license, and I was up at the Pinnacle working there for a bit, so we were able to chat. So yeah, that's how Justin and I have met. We've stayed in touch over the years, and yeah, so Justin, let's just kind of jump into it, okay? So I'm actually kind of excited to talk about it. So you went to the Bradenton Academy, you graduated, I guess from there. How did you get selected to go there? Because I remember hearing about this U.S. residency program as a kid and thinking it was obviously it is for the top of the top, but how did you get selected for that? And then we can kind of talk on what doors that opened up for you.
Sure. So the residency program started, I believe, in 2000, around 2000. So my group was the second one to actually go there. We were preceded by the Donovan, DeMarcus Beasley kind of group, the 82s. So I was an 84. And my path to getting to that residency point was at that time through ODP, which is obviously how we met. Yep. And I know the ODP program changed a little bit over the years, but that was kind of the way to be identified back in the late 90s, early 2000s, and there weren't really any MLS academies. MLS was very new at that point, so the academy route wasn't really an option. So it was kind of working through that ODP process from state team, regional team, and then ultimately national team. So kind of just worked my way up from there, got the invite to residency. I think, there was around 20, 25 of us that moved to Bradenton. And then, it's been a couple of years culminating with a Youth World Cup. So that was kind of the end of it. And then everyone went their separate ways, whether it's, back home to finish high school or off to college or MLS or professional options that were on the table. So, but that's kind of how that came to be.
Okay. And while you were there, so kind of talk to the listeners, what was the day like for you? Just, normal day. Let's say it's not a game. You're just in the midst of training. What happens when you wake up? What time is that to when you go to sleep?
Yeah.
Years ago.
It's obviously a while ago. So
Yeah.
I don't remember my exact schedule, but obviously you get up, you kind of do everything as a team, almost as if you're on a road trip with your professional team or college team or whatever. Eat in the cafeteria together, get ready, you go to school together. We went to a small private school, kind of all together, same classes. So, you're around your teammates nonstop. I think school was a little bit shorter, kind of given the circumstances, kind of get out around lunchtime. And then we would rest for a couple hours, and then we would go train. I think usually middle of the afternoon, 3:30, somewhere in there. Finish back to our, where we stayed, eat as a team back in the cafeteria, and rinse and repeat. So,
right.
Kind of just a daily schedule as if you're in almost like a professional environment on the road, or everything's done with your team. You live with them, you eat with them, you train with them, and so you're just bonding nonstop. So that was kind of a normal day, and obviously games here and there, weekends, we would travel to play teams, maybe abroad or local in Florida. But that's kind of how that went about.
And how old were you? What was your age range when you were there?
So we were the 84s. So obviously you had to be born in 84.
Well, so I meant like when you were at the residency, like
when I was
you?
Yeah, so I left my high school in halfway through my freshman year. So that would have been, I think I was 15.
Yeah,
give or take. So we were all about 15 when we went there, and when we left, we were, I guess, 17. We were there about 2 years. So, but yeah, left midway through my freshman year, and moved down there. We were all obviously roughly the same age, give or take, when your birthday fell. So.
All right, and who were some of the players that were in that class? I know you mentioned the one previous with Landon and Beasley.
Yeah.
Who are some guys that were in your class?
So in my class there was Eddie Johnson, Florida product, had a great career. Mike McGee, Chicago native. Chad Marshall, who had a great career in MLS, great defender.
Wow.
Many years. Yeah. So we had some good players that Santino Quaranta, he went to DC early on. Let's see. I'm trying to think who else. Jordan Harvey plays for LAFC, left back. He had a pretty long career. He's still playing for LAFC.
Right.
So I think he's the only one that's still making a career out of it. All of us are all retired by now. So.
And didn't McGee stepped away not too long ago, right? From the Galaxy, was it?
I think we stepped away roughly the same time, maybe about 2 years ago, give or take. I know he had some health issues from injuries and stuff. Kind of the reason I stepped away as well. Usually how it goes, but we stepped away roughly the same time, and Mike McGee, obviously. So yeah, we had some good players and ones that went on to have some pretty great careers.
Great MLS careers there. You mentioned a lot of big name people. So all right, so the end of residency, you had the Youth World Cup. You signed as an MLS Project 40 player, and then you were drafted 4th overall by DC United. So that was in 2002. How was the draft process like? What was being a Project 40 player like? I know things didn't work out too well in DC United as far as your length of stay. So just kind of how was that experience like for you?
Yeah, obviously kind of went down to Florida. If I remember correctly, we just had kind of a combine. So it was mainly college players coming out of college, and then a handful of young players, whether it was Project 40 or just kind of random circumstances. But the majority at that time were college players coming out of college. Had a combine, a little round robin. They just put you on a random team. And then we had our draft in Orlando at Disney World a couple days later. The combine, I believe, was in Fort Lauderdale. And drafted by DC. And I was actually finishing my last semester of high school, after I left Florida back in Mississippi. So they allowed me to finish my high school throughout the spring, and then I joined DC that summer.
Wow.
And then between that, I don't think we made the playoffs. I was only in DC for probably 3 or 4 months tops, from joining, midway through their season in the summer to not making the playoffs, and then was traded right after that. So really my time there was very short, and, kind of a blip looking back on it. Wasn't able to really make an impact, and really just not there for a long stretch in general. So, but that's kind of how that came about.
Right. Now, anything that I wouldn't say regret, but maybe anything that you would have done differently with the decisions to make that decision to play competitively at such a young age? Obviously, you're down there for high school. 2.5 years. That's where your friends, that's where your family is. But you made the decision that this was what you wanted. So looking back on it, anything maybe you would have changed or done differently?
I don't know. It's tough to say regret because, again, it all worked out and everything like that. A lot, probably half the people from that residency, went on to play college for at least a year or two. So maybe if anything, would have tried college for a year or two just to get the experience,
Right.
I know that's not the typical route for a lot of players across the world, but obviously, I guess, American way of life is college is a big aspect of it. So I think just to maybe go for at least a year, maybe one season of college soccer, just to get an experience. If I did choose another way, probably would have done that. But at the end of the day, it all worked out. That got me on the start of my journey and my path professionally. So, happy with the decision. So
cool. So after DC, that short stint, you're then traded over to Chicago, correct? And you're able to, I guess, compared to DC, start to fly and start to thrive a little bit. How did the trade end up happening, right? And how was the experience there? What did you think made Chicago, I guess, different? Was it the manager, the players, the playing style, things like that?
Yeah, I think just, obviously from a young player, whether it's practice, month, year, every little bit of experience I was able to get, I was growing all the time. I was, in my infancy as far as a professional. So I was traded over, and I was lucky enough to be a part of a very good team. I think my first year in Chicago was one of the best teams I've ever played on. It just happened to be my first year.
Right.
We were able to win that first year Supporters Shield. We were in MLS Cup. We lost, but had some legends on that team, and I think a lot of strong veteran players that have played in the professional game for a while. So that made me grow up really quick. If I was going to be a part and help, I guess make my mark on the team. So I had to grow up quick. I learned a lot in a short time frame, and you had your Carlos Bocanegras, DeMarcus Beasley, Jesse Marsh, Chris Armas, Zach Thornton. Just big time players that had already established themselves. So I learned a lot right away, and I knew if I was going to help the team, I was going to have to learn how to be a pro pretty quick. So I think the environment that I went into there with those types of players helped me out a lot right away, which maybe if I went to a different environment, a different team, who knows how it would have worked out. So I think I was fortunate where I landed after that first year in DC.
Yeah, and those are some big time names, not only in the MLS but in the U.S. national team as well. So some great people to play with and to learn under for sure.
Yeah.
So after you were there for about 7-8 seasons, then you went over to Philadelphia for a short period of time. How, I guess, did that trade or how did that move come up from Chicago to Philly, and how was your time there?
Yeah, so I think it was just midsummer 2010. Just got called into kind of our GM's office. It was Frank Klopas at the time, and he just said, we're thinking about moving you, kind of unsuspected. I think maybe wasn't in my best form in that year. Battled some injuries. You're in a place for 7 years. At that point, I'm not ever thinking, hey, I'm leaving, but that's the naivety of it. But again, you learn real quick, okay, it's still a business and this can happen anytime. Luckily enough, I was able to stay there for as long as I did. But I guess it was time for kind of to move on and kind of get a fresh start. So he said, we're looking at moving you. We'll let you know at the beginning of next week. I think this was on a Friday. And on Monday brought me back in and said, we've got something lined up with Philly. You're leaving tomorrow. So pack a bag. And I was kind of like, well, where am I going? So, all right. So packed a bag, and I was in Philly by the next day and then finished out the season there, which was only about 2 or 3 months left, and then spent the next season. So I was there a season and maybe a quarter, so fairly short period. But yeah, that's the business side of it. And I was lucky enough to stay in one place for so long. But again, just like that, you can be somewhere else, new locker room, new teammates, new surroundings, and as a footballer, you got to adapt, and that's just part of the business. So that's kind of how that went.
Yeah, well, and I think that, so I've talked to a few other of the guests, and a lot of them have not even had the experience to be somewhere for more than 3 years, right?
Yeah.
2 years is, the max, especially with USL contracts. They're usually just the 1 or the 1 plus the option.
Sure.
So, to be somewhere for that long, yeah, you feel like that's home, and you get used to the life and being there, and then you get reminded sometimes very abruptly that it's very much a business, and that's what, that's the game of it.
Yeah, for sure.
So from there, you were at Philly, and you were then selected, or put in, I guess, put up for the expansion draft by Philly. Now, I did read somewhere that it was not something that you were expecting to be put up for that. So before we get into that, can you explain to the listeners what the MLS expansion draft is? Because I think that's kind of unclear for a lot of people, since the NFL and NBA aren't really getting too many
Right. Right. A little more established, but
yeah.
So the expansion draft was obviously Montreal was coming into the league in 2012 to make it easier for them to build their roster. Every team protects, I think, 10 or 11 of their players. And then to help build the numbers for their team, they're allowed to select one player from each team. Once they've selected a player from your team, no one else can be selected. So all the 10 players that your team protects, so if Philly protects 10 players, they can't be selected. Everyone else is up for grab, obviously up to one selection.
Yeah.
So I wasn't protected. And sometimes as a team, it's a calculated gamble. Hey, we want to protect him, and we only protect 10. We don't think they're going to take him. So there could be a lot of different reasons.
Sure.
Or maybe they don't protect you. They just don't value you anymore. It could be as simple as that.
Right.
But for whatever reason, wasn't protected, and didn't know I would get selected by Montreal because, again, they only have so many selections. But Jesse Marsch was going to be the new coach, and I did have a history with him in Chicago, so he was fond of me, and I was still at a pretty young age. So he selected me, and I spoke with him before that, and he asked if I would, be interested in moving north to Canada, and I said, hey, let's do it. So that's kind of how that went, and a little unsuspected, but again, kind of like the trade, MLS is crazy with these expansion drafts and trades, and so I got to experience a little bit of all of it, I guess. But just kind of try to go into it with an open mind. So.
Yeah, you've kind of had all parts of the MLS and the youth soccer experience as far as the U.S. soccer pathway at ODP, which is pretty cool. So while you were at Montreal, you won, and I had to look this up, the George Gross Memorial Trophy, right? And that was something that you won back to back. You were one of 2 players ever in the history to win that. So can you talk about what that trophy is? And I know in Canada they have, their own, not domestic leagues, but like an Open Cup type thing, and they've got their own kind of system. So I was playing.
Yeah. So that trophy was basically MVP of what is basically their Open Cup, Canadian Open Cup. Obviously, a lot less teams involved than the U.S. because there's just a lot less teams. So it's a much smaller tournament, but one I've noticed pretty quick that they take pretty serious, and one that's been going on for a while. And also learned pretty quick being in Montreal that they hate Toronto, which we were able to knock out twice. So Montreal is a French city. Toronto is obviously English. So they have that language rivalry that has a big history in Canada. So they have that. They have that rivalry. They're about 6 hours apart down one main highway. So I learned pretty quick that winning that trophy was pretty important to them, and that was kind of the MVP of that, which we won in 13 and 14, but is also a place directly into the Champions League. So, a tough tournament to win, but a little bit easier to get into than maybe winning the Supporters Shield or winning MLS Cup. If you can work your way through that small tournament, that's a direct pipeline to Champions League, which is another reason for us to take it pretty serious. So,
So what you're saying is, if you go back to Montreal at any time, you're getting free drinks. Is that what I hear?
I get some pretty good. I don't know about free drinks, but the fans like me up there, and have a pretty good rapport with them through social media. So
that's cool.
So maybe if I run into some of the fans, they'll buy me a free drink. Who knows?
Get you a drink. I like it.
That's right.
And while you were there, you also played, and it's kind of crazy that there's one person that I know that's played with Well, you're the second person actually that I know that played with him. So how was that like? I saw you just posted on your Instagram a picture with him the other day.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, he was that was actually a picture from, we had a little we played a Brazilian legend team last year. They brought everyone back to the stadium in Montreal and brought some ex-players in. We played Cafu and Rivaldo and some ex-Brazilian legends, and it was a fun little event. So kind of ran into him at that. But yeah, he came in the last year I was there, halfway through the season, and we didn't spend as much time together on the field because I was kind of injured that year.
Right.
But did play a few games, and obviously was around him in the locker room, and just the nicest, most humble guy ever. And I mean, you never know with these stars coming from Europe how they're going to be, how they're going to treat you. And he was the nicest guy ever. He would take our team out to lunch, and I remember in the first lunch sitting across from him, just kind of surreal, and he's sitting there telling us Chelsea Champions League stories and Lampard and Abramovich and just all these players in the locker room, and we're all just sitting there let me tell you about this time in Mississippi when I was growing up.
Right.
So just a legend of the game, and but you just never know that those guys are going to be. So, but he was just a humble guy and who's done it all, legend of the game, and that was pretty cool to play with him. And Alessandro Nesta, the list goes on, but obviously Drogba, he sticks out for sure. So
yeah. So all right. So after your time in Montreal, you were then picked up by Sporting, and that's where you I think maybe was the connection when we talked, was that I was So even though you weren't there long as a free agent, how was your time in with Sporting and with Peter?
Yeah. So obviously my time there, I'd kind of left Montreal and I'd battled injuries all that year. I had a turf toe, and I came to Sporting, and I had visited that off season, and Peter took me around and showed me the stadium, and I'd always had a lot of respect for the organization, and since they got the new stadium and the fans, it was always an incredible place to play, and kind of wanted a fresh start out of Montreal, having been injured that past year, and kind of just ready to get back to the U.S. And they showed interest, so signed with them, and came there kind of with an injury, and unfortunately that injury never really went away. Turf toe, it lasted a lot longer than anybody expected, obviously myself included. So unfortunately I wasn't able to make the impact on the field, but otherwise my time was great. I enjoyed the 1 year I was there, and played with some players I'd played against forever, and a lot of great U.S. veterans, Zusi, Beasler, Brad Davis, some of those guys that have been around Sporting forever. So, again, unfortunately, on the field wasn't able to take shape like I had planned due to injuries, but otherwise, nothing but good things to say about the organization, and they're still doing well for themselves, obviously. So.
Right. Yeah. And I've heard nothing. I mean, I've heard good things about them as well. And I've had a few people on here that played with them or that coach with them. So it's good to hear that. All right. So on top of the MLS career, you had a really extensive career with the U.S. national team. Obviously, being part of the residency was a big start of it. Ending in that World Cup, Youth World Cup run. You won some world championships. How was your time with them as a youth player up to getting your first team cap?
Yeah, so obviously spent a lot of time in the youth program, U17s, under 20s World Cup. We made a good run in United Arab Emirates. Almost made it to the semifinals, which I think might have been the first U.S. team ever. Whereas we were lost to Argentina in the quarters of that in Golden Goal, a stacked Argentina team that I think either won it or lost in the finals, maybe to Brazil. So, we were an extra time away from making it to the semis. So spent a lot of time with the youth programs. But then obviously, your goal is to make it to that senior team. So I think, getting my first cap, I believe, was 05 in a World Cup qualifier against Panama. I think we had already qualified, but nonetheless, that was my first cap, and obviously one of my favorite and most memorable moments throughout my entire career, from MLS or whatever. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, you work throughout the youth program, but it's not easy to make it to that final step of the men's team. So obviously, again, just fond memories from that, and yeah.
And I was going to say a ton of people obviously start off or get chances to play with the youth national team. And, but like you said, the few amount of people that make it to actually getting on the pitch, not even getting called into a camp, that's big. So
Yeah.
that's,
Sure.
I mean, congrats. I think you ended with 8
Thank you.
caps,
Yeah,
right?
8 caps. Yeah. So, I mean, you always look back on it and say, hey, I should have been more. But at the end of the day, 8 caps is better than 0. So,
Hey, you have more caps than me. So,
hey, I seen your videos. You're making a come up though.
I'm trying to the 2026.
That's right. I'm gonna be looking for you. Yeah. So yeah, again, just thankful for all of them, whether it's 8, 1, or 100. So yeah, for sure.
All right, man. So what's life like now for you? So you've had this crazy playing career. You've done a lot. You've played at high levels. Now I know you're doing some private training, and that's another way that you and I have kind of connected because I'm doing the same thing. So what's life like for you now?
Sorry.
Yeah, it broke up a bit. There we go.
Sorry, it was cutting out a little. Yeah, you're back. Yeah, so obviously, we both kind of touched on it, but yeah, so kind of stepped away from the game in 17, end of 2017, and really didn't know if I wanted to coach. I've always thought I would, but didn't really want to jump right into a full team environment, or had a couple opportunities to join some MLS staffs as a second assistant.
Yeah.
But kind of just wanted to take a step back and, move back to Mississippi and started my own kind of training program just to kind of get my feet wet, see if I even enjoy being around kids or enjoy teaching, because again, it's not for everybody. And again, that's kind of what I've done for the past couple of years, and have kind of built it up and have enjoyed it. I've learned a lot, and, I've obviously, I know we've spoken about, taking our courses together, took the B course. So again, just trying to learn the craft, and it's so much different than playing. Even though you have a good feeling for the game, there's so much that goes into it that as a player, you never really even think about. And the time and effort to run a session, and all the obstacles that can present itself within that session, from players not showing up or whatever it may be, just a whole new world. So really trying to take time to dedicate myself to learn and be humble. And, despite a playing career, doesn't mean you know anything, about coaching. So that's what I'm doing now, and enjoying it, and doing it back where I grew up. So it kind of means more to me to work with the kids in Mississippi, kind of see myself, when I was a young kid, growing up around this area. So we'll see where it goes, whether I continue that or get into more of a first team environment or full team environment down the road. We'll see, but everything's kind of on the table at this point.
Yeah. So did you always know you wanted to coach when you were done playing, or how did that come up for you?
I did some coaching throughout while I was playing, just a little here and there. Obviously nothing super time consuming, but I would help out, in my different stops with different clubs just to get a little experience. So I'd always had it kind of in the back of my mind, but didn't know for sure, but, when I look, when I finish, what do I know? I know soccer.
Right.
What am I going to do next? This is what I've been around my whole life, and almost like I could do anything, but I almost feel like I owe it to these kids to share my experience, share my knowledge, and, whether I do or not, that's kind of my mindset. I think I owe it to these kids to share what, my experiences, and again, playing at a high level. So hopefully, I've been able to do that. Awesome.
Yeah. And I know we've talked about some things for the next step with the DA team, or possibly the growing experience training. And we've talked about, even having you come out to Kansas City and doing some guest sessions with Kyle and myself. So,
for sure. Yeah. No doubt.
All right, man. So a few things we want to get into, and we do the first part of the podcast, which is the personalized stuff, so the listeners can get to know you. But then I also have asked a lot of my players and listeners what are questions they wish they could ask some pro players or people that have different experiences, right? So
Okay.
I'm just going to shoot out a few questions to you, and
All right.
I'd love to hear what you think, all right?
All right. Sounds good.
So what advice do you wish that you got as a youth player? Or what is something that now looking back at it, you wish you could tell yourself?
I think I would tell myself, I'll go with two things. One, you can only control what you can control.
Yep.
You've learned that at all levels, even at the professional game. Youth player, control what you can control. And this is what I tell all my trainees when we first start working: is control what you can control. You can control coming here with a good attitude and a good work ethic. I don't expect you to be perfect. I don't care if you have a bad touch 10 out of 10 times, whatever. If I see you have a good attitude and you want to grow, that's all I care about. So I think control what you can control. And like I said, that boils down to your work ethic, your attitude. You can control that. A lot of stuff we can't control, but those are pretty simple. And then I would also tell myself, just keep working, because there's levels to all of it. And I saw that from an ODP standpoint, from state team to regional team to national team, to even when we're on the national team and you play another national team and their level's better than you. So I think, in Mississippi or wherever, you might get a player that thinks he's the best player ever, that maybe is not exposed to other levels or outside of where he or she is from. There's always levels better than you. And there's a lot of those levels. So keep working, stay humble, because there are better players out there than you. And not for you not to be confident in your ability, but once you get out of your small bubble, you start to your eyes open to that pretty quick. So
All right, and then where is it? When does the U.S. win the World Cup?
You said you were going to be playing in 2026. So
are we gonna peg it?
I like our chances.
There we go.
I know we're joking about that, but I'm going to say 2026. I know that seems weird to say because we didn't even make the last one, but if you look at the time frame 6 years from now, kind of the young crop of players that are just breaking onto the scene, your Adams, your Pulisic, Reynas, those players will be in will be in their prime, mid-20s. It's on home soil. We don't have to worry about qualifying, so that's taken care of.
The hardest part's already done for us.
Yeah. I think you see a lot of these young players that are ready to make their mark over the next 2 years. So 2022 might be cutting it close to make a real mark. We'll see. But I think 2026, if some of these players pan out that you're starting to hear about, why not? I think your Messi's and some of your bigger teams, they'll be a little too old then. Not that they don't have up-and-coming talent, but, hey, we'll go with 2026.
2026. I love it. I'll get
it. You heard it here first.
Yeah, I heard it here first. Well, I'm going to be in it, so.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
All right, man. And then let's get like a dream five aside for you. So we're going to have you pick two teams. One's going to be with you plus four other people that you've played with at any point in your career. And then I want you to pick you plus four other people of any dream soccer player still alive. Now, the thing is, there has to be a goalie involved. So you can't just say, I'm going all attacking.
So I need a goalie for both teams?
Yes.
Okay. So for the players I've played with, obviously myself in there, I'm going to say goalie. I'm going to go with Zach Thornton, my old Chicago Fire goalie. Okay. Myself, let's see, three. So I get three more players. That's not a lot of options.
Three more players.
Wow. This is tough. I'm going to go with your man Drogba.
All right. I would hope so.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Drogba. I'm going to go with we need a defender. I'm going to go with Alessandro Nesta.
Good choice.
And then one more. We need maybe another playmaker. I'm going to go with Cuauhtemoc Blanco, Chicago Fire, Mexican international, number 10. Yeah, there we go.
All right. And then for any 4 people that you would like to play with at any point in their career, your career.
Oh, wow. Oh, man. I'll go with – jeez, it's too many options. I'll go with not too long retired. I'll go with Iniesta.
All right. Good one.
I'll go Arjen Robben.
Ooh.
Another lefty.
Ooh, Robin. Okay.
1, 2.
You've got 2 more.
Am I on this team? I got how many
on
more?
the team. Now, I've had someone called and said they wanted to manage their team. My last person said they would manage. So maybe we'll try that. But
all right.
I'll need a goalie, don't forget.
I'll manage these. So we got 2.
All right.
Goalie, I'll go wow. I don't really care about goalies, so I'll go with the German Manuel Neuer.
Okay, good choice.
And then I need 2 more. Let's see.
Yep.
I could go the easy route and pick your
could.
Ronaldos, your Messis. I'm gonna put Messi on there just because I can't leave him off. I know that's the obvious pick, but I can't leave him off.
You can.
So I got Robin, Messi, Neuer, 2 more.
Iniesta, and then
Yep. Iniesta. We'll go with I'll go with the defender. I'll go with Maldini.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I like that. Some names that maybe some of our listeners have not heard. Some of the players.
That's what I got for you.
I love it, Justin. Well, look, man, we're getting ready to wrap things up here. I've got one final question that I want to pose to you, and it's a very personal thing, and it's what's your why? What's the reason, or what was your why? Why did you get up every day? Why did you go to the trainings? Why did you deal with the injuries? Why did you deal with the trades? What was your reason for it?
Well, that's a good question. I would just say, obviously, it became my job at a certain point, but I mean, I loved it. I love soccer, been around it forever. I'm passionate about it. As a kid, couldn't get enough.
Yeah.
Obviously, as I moved into the professional game, if I don't get up and go to practice, even though there's days I didn't want to, I'm not going to have a job. So
so there's that part.
So I needed a job, but no, I was passionate about it. And what I tell my kids, and I'm sure you reiterate the same things, if you're not doing it, other kids are. So that's all I need to know. I was competitive and yeah, just loved it. Loved the process, not just the game, but getting there from the off-season work to the training. I know everyone doesn't, but I enjoyed the process that got to Saturday or Sunday.
Yeah.
That got us to the day to perform. So, yeah, just a passion, really.
I love it, and you touched on a good point, the process to get there, and I'm with you. I love doing the stuff that people don't want to do because that's what sets you that much further apart from them.
Sure.
And it was Benjamin Mendy said you fall in love with training, and then matches are just public displays of affection. And
yeah,
I
like that.
I think it was in the All In. Or the All or Nothing documentary, but I heard that and it's like that's awesome because I love the training. That's what makes you better, and that's the process and the levels that you touched on earlier in the talk.
Yeah,
that's
for sure.
So, well, Justin, my man, Justin Mapp, thank you so much for being on this episode of the podcast. Do you have any final words or anything that you want to leave with the listeners?
Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you down the road.
My man. Everyone, thank you for listening. This is Brian Turner here with No Stress Midwest Podcast. Have a good one.